I am your host, Carrie Scollon, giving us different perspectives on where we are and where we want to go on our journey. Thanks for being here, and I look forward to spending some time with you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another session of the FoundHer series. I am your host, Carrie Scollon. I have another amazing guest on this week for you. I followed Andrea, I think it's been for a few years now. I love her energy. I love her processes. She was the very first retreat that I ever attended when I started to do my own. And I'm telling you, I think I did learn from the best. So I am thrilled to have Andrea on the show. Welcome, Andrea Ferguson. Please come on in. We want to talk. We want to get your story. You are a perfect definition of a FoundHer.
Thank you.
And that I mean doing what you loved, doing what you love to do.
Yeah, thank you.
Come on in, let me know.
Thank you so much for having me here. And you were a gem having you at the retreat. And I remember just going, oh, this girl's got a light. I remember thinking that. I'm like, just yes, you have this beautiful light and such a gift. So I'm so excited to be here on your show.
Thank you. This is great. Well, I would love for you to share with the audience where kind of your story, where you started, the middle, good, bad, ugly, amazing parts, and then where you are now and what you're doing.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think he kind of brought a great question at the beginning of our chat today about sort of this concept of busyness, right? And, I think I burst into the scene of life and just came in with this I was very celebrated for, achieving and my achievements. And I had this, what I now call or refer to as this like high achiever hustle. And I spent so much of my life just like, just in achiever mode, just the next thing, the next thing, the next level, the next. I remember at a point in my life where I was like, there has to be another way to life than this. I remember feeling at a really, key period, like, I'm doing all of these things in my life. Everything I'm doing is trying to like get somewhere. So I don't feel this feeling, right? I'm trying to like chase something to stop this energy of busyness, this feeling of busyness.
Yes.
Right. And I feel like I just lived my life that way for so long. I go sharing with you, the memories come up on my Facebook from like years and years ago where I'd like celebrated working like 45 days in a row with no break. And I was like, so proud of myself.
Yes.
Right. So proud of myself that I had, that I worked so hard.
Yeah.
I had this real deep need to prove that I worked hard enough, prove that the need to earn and prove that essentially I was enough, or that I deserved to have what I had in my life.
Well, that's usually what it comes down to, isn't it? Is that more than enough piece? Yeah. Are we enough? Yeah. And it's also busyness back then was like a badge of honor. Like
it totally was.
Busy you were, the more important you were, the better you were.
The more successful you are.
Yes. Yeah. And that's just not the case.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had to learn that the hard way. So I remember, I had, this time I had a fitness business. I had 2 young children. My husband had a business. I had coaching clients. I had fitness clients. And I just remember feeling absolutely exhausted. And I took really good care of myself. Mm-hmm. While I felt very called to all of this stuff on the same level, I was just absolutely exhausted. And I started to describe it at the time as like soul tired.
Oh, that's a good description.
Yeah. Like soul tired here. There's no amount of sleep that is going to fix this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was just sort of this process and this journey that I've been on. I started to go, there has to be a way that you can like live a meaningful life, or maybe you're achieving your dreams, or, working towards aspirations, but you're not like killing yourself in the process, that you're not, that you're not absolutely exhausted. And so it was just that those internal moments of reflection that started to me like, there has to be a better way to this. And with all the level of success I achieved, I remember sitting there going, when is this feeling going to go away? This feeling inside of me that like seemed to never be able to be quenched by anything outside of me.
Yes.
And when I really got curious about it, it really was, this sort of low-grade anxiety. Low-grade anxiety of just, I always have to like go in order to, do enough, or I have to chase that next level, or I have to get to the next thing. And it was just this approach to life I had. I think a lot of us can relate, right? We've been conditioned to think that success is something like climbing, a never-ending climb.
And I've talked about this before too, is along that journey for me, and I'm only speaking for me, but there's some guilt along there that we shouldn't feel this way because of what we have.
Yes.
So then that anxiety piece that's in our stomach, part of that is guilt.
Yeah. And like that I got to prove, and I got to work so hard to actually prove that I deserve this.
Yes.
To prove that it's okay for me to have this.
Yes.
Because there's a little energy of like, well, who am I to, right? And so I remember having these moments of like, I'm not sure I can do this anymore. So that's always just informed me. I have this, I would describe myself as a learner, and I just keep asking, okay, well, why am I feeling this way? And what can I do about it? There has to be another way. That one question, there has to be another way. There has to be something that I can do differently around this. That has fueled everything. And so I would just keep leaning into that. And that would usually lead me to a new mentor, or it would lead me to a new book, or it would lead me to something that would invite new perspective, or that would offer me a new way of seeing things. And
so that was, there has to be another way.
Yeah. I'm just going to yeah. Like, so instead of just going, oh, this is just the way life is, I was like, I don't buy that. I don't, this feeling of like, my whole life was designed at this point. Like I was, drawn to the things that I was going to, and I felt they inspired me, but the way I was going about it was very rooted in like, here's what success is supposed to look like. Here's what a successful business is supposed to look like. Here's how you grow a successful business. Here's what a good mom looks like. Here's what a good wife looks like. And it was very externally created, right? Rather than like, well, is that true for me? And is that a match for me? And how does that work for me? Like I hadn't even questioned that at some points. This is
a lot of people do.
Right? Yeah.
You just get
started to question it. I started to question it because I'm like, I'm doing all the things.
Yeah.
But I'm exhausted and I'm tired, and this feeling inside. Like I thought that the reason I did these things is to make this feeling go away. And it just never seemed to go away. So that's when I started to question and challenge it. Naturally, I started to bump up against stuff then. You started to bump up against, my people-pleasing tendencies.
Right.
My codependent stuff. Like I realized I had this belief that I can relax and I can be happy and I can be okay when everybody in my world, which was like all my clients and my family and my friends, were taken care of. Like as long as they're happy and as long as they're good, then I can.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Well, that's just a never. That just means that there's a never. So I was always sort of chasing that, trying to kind of get ahead of that. Now, naturally that led to, the creation of some things in my life. But what that ended up doing is that I had created this whole way of being and this whole structure that was really dependent on everything outside of me.
Totally.
I lost myself in that.
Yes, 100%. I can relate to that 100%.
And then I was terrified to extricate myself from that.
Yeah.
Because of course I had all the beliefs of why I had done that in the first place.
Yeah.
Yet I could no longer handle it. And I can look back now, and I used to do this, which I wouldn't have understood at the time. But I used to go into flight mode. So, we talk about nervous system states, right? And I would go into flight mode, which was overwork, hustle, hustle hard, overdo, overfunction, overthink, overanalyze, and then be very, very productive. And then I would hit a limit, and then I would flip into freeze mode. It would be a very functional freeze mode. I could still go through the motions of things until I couldn't. I remember this, and I had so much responsibility on my plate. I had set everything up with people very, very reliant and dependent on me. And I was frozen.
Oh, wow.
And I was frozen, and I remember like trying, like, okay, I've got to take this action. I would try and gear up. I would try and go into flight mode, which I didn't understand at the time. And I even had like coaches who would be like, yes, just go, positive think, push, you can do it, just push a little harder. And I'd be like, I can't. I literally can't. And I would be curled up in fetal position on my office floor.
Wow.
But I can't. And then I'm like, oh my God, I can't. And then it would just be like the horrification of, is that a word?
It worked perfectly there.
The reality of what that might look like if I can't.
Yeah.
And so I continued to push, and that just caused me like to flip into freeze mode even more. So I remember being for about 18 months, being like frozen in fear, trying to push myself forward, and it just not working.
Yeah.
And then I described them as just one 2x4 after the other. And I call them spiritual 2x4s. It's just that I really wasn't listening. I wasn't listening to, that there was new ways to do things, that I was really being called to like, listen, like, how's this working for you? How's this pattern that you've got going on working? There is another way, and you cannot continue to keep operating from this place.
Right.
And I would just get 2x4. So that looked like financial challenges, looks like relationship challenges. It looks like I felt like it would be layered, one challenge after the other. And I was so scared to do anything different until I could feel it started to crack and crumble. And I just, it was just, And so,
keep going.
And then we talked earlier about surrender.
Well, I think there's a piece in there that I want to talk about, because anybody that's starting on this journey, sometimes we dip our toe in and we read the book and we start to get a little,
that was me.
That was me too. And then I started, like you said, you start to uncover things that they don't feel good. Like, I got some things in my face going, I got to make some changes. And that's a pivotal moment, because there were a lot of times where I was like, I don't want to do this. I'm fine. It's fine the way it is. Yeah.
I do that. I'm like, oh no, I got this. I almost like put on my, like, I want to put on my strength backpack, and I can just achieve, I can just positive think and achieve my way through this.
That would be great. I just know that it was like, sometimes I wanted to stick my head back in the sand or whatever that is, because it was hard. Like, and I think that's what a perfect example would be marriage. And my mom always said, it's not all, she was real. She's like, it's hard and it takes hard work, but it's worth it. Like, you put the time in and you communicate and it takes time and it takes effort, but it's worth it. And that's what I found on this personal development, spiritual journey. It was like, there were times where it was just like, this feels worse than it did before I started.
Why am I doing this?
Yes, or cleaning a closet and you pull everything out and it just looks horrible and you're overwhelmed. And then all of a sudden you just start putting pieces back, or you're letting go of pieces. That's what I feel like this whole journey is.
Yes.
And sometimes you feel worse than you did at the beginning, but you need to get through those, like you said, maybe it's not a push.
It's
maybe not pushing. Yeah. It's
I was like, I always remember, like, I cannot push any more, like, I just can't. And so that's when I learned the art of surrender. So it's almost like the pulling out of things, and it's like, okay, I got to call in support here. And this is where that's where I think a lot of us are led to more of a spiritual approach or seeing things on a more broader spiritual perspective. And I learned the art of surrender, right? It's like, okay, I can't see my way through this. And I'm going to learn how to surrender through this and surrender into a new way forward. There has to be a new way. I trust that there is. And I had enough belief or trust in that for some reason. And then the practice of learning to surrender. And that was actually how I finally was able to move through, is I just had to trust in the chaos or trust in the mess.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I just trusted there was purpose in it.
And you trusted in the way that if you had a feeling, your intuition, you followed that rather than what you thought you should do.
Yes.
You just did what felt was the next best.
Yeah, because when I kept following what I thought I was supposed to do, things weren't getting better. It was getting more, it felt like things were coming more layered and more complicated. It felt more intense, if anything. You know what I mean? So people are telling me this is the way to do it, but that's not feeling good to me. So if that's not working for me, and it does feel terrifying to let go because people are telling me that's what I should be doing, but it's not working. So what have I got to lose in going, I'm going to go trust in here instead. I'm going to go trust that I just feel called to do this instead.
Yes.
And when I started doing that, and I started listening to that, that's when things started to fall into place for me.
I love that. Okay.
Started to, yeah.
We've got to, I would love for you to, because I think this is a great, oh, look, I'm all excited.
This is where the juicy stuff is. This is where it's like, oh my gosh, when you can get here.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and so that's what I would love, like for somebody that's just starting out, like, where do they start in that surrendering process? I know for me, it was, I needed to get quiet because I was so in my head that I wasn't getting what I needed. I felt I needed to go from my heart. My heart always knows what's right for me. Yeah. Always. And I try to sink back into that. But tell me, like, what would you do in those early days of, you need to surrender, but that's easier said than done.
Yeah. For sure. So my process was one where I couldn't do it alone. So that's something I actually did call on support. So I worked with mentors and guides. So this is where I started leaning into more like intuitive coaches who could help me in that. And they really trusted their intuition. So they would kind of nudge me, and they would actually, this was neat. So they would actually say things to me, and I'm like, that's how I feel. And they're like, follow it. So it was almost like they were guiding me on how to trust myself. So I did have to work with coaches around that. And also I had resources too. So like you spoke to the surrender experiment with Michael Singer, or, some of the more spiritual based books. So those were the books that I turned to and leaned on that helped me build that place of trusting myself.
Well, and that's a great place to start, because even if you go to the bookstore and you go into that section, you just what's drawn to you? Like, start there. That could be something so simple that just trust a little nudge that you're getting just by looking at a title of a book. You could look, it could be even how pretty the cover of the book is. Right?
Notice what you're drawn to.
Yes.
Even if it doesn't make sense. So so even just setting the intention to surrender. Like, that's powerful. It's just that I learned, and this is what I surrender, and like, just show me. It's kind of where I got to. And then I just started to like notice the things that would be coming in then. Notice the things that I would be, that the experiences or the opportunities, there'd be little opportunities and little nuggets and little things that were coming in. And sometimes they'd be easy to dismiss. Or my tendency would be like, no, I have to do and I would do this. And I just realized that, that's what I've always do. And it's not working for me. So I'm just going to try something new. Right. And so that's what I started to do, is just little things, whether it was a book or a podcast or who I was listening to. And that's how we started.
Yes. Because you need to build up some of that, it's almost like evidence to me.
Yes.
And every time you do that, you're going to get evidence that, oh, that worked, or evidence that it didn't. And maybe you had a little feeling like, I don't think this is going to work, but I'm going to do it anyways. And then you get evidence like, you were right.
Yep. Those are valuable. All of that's valuable. None of that is wrong, right? All of that is super valuable. We have to know the difference between like really trusting that, like that inner knowing and that inner trust versus maybe what our head is telling us, and we got to play with it. And that's how you learn.
I heard somebody say something about that, where if it's kind of like your ego or your intuition, and how to kind of tell the difference, because sometimes we don't know. And it's I had a description that I really liked. It was like the ego is kind of, And the intuition is kind of like,
Yeah.
like this is a very slight difference sometimes, but it's coming from a nicer place, your intuition, and your ego's coming from a place of wanting to keep us safe, right?
Yes.
Like, don't do that because you might get embarrassed, or don't do that because you're going to fail. Or, and then the intuition is just like, yeah, you might,
Yeah.
but it's okay. It's okay to fail. Like, I don't know. I just love that different.
I love it. So simple. So
Yeah.
simple.
And that's what I believe in. It's
push.
simple. Yes, we got to keep it simple, or there's so much stuff out there and it's so overwhelming. So just small steps.
Yeah.
And then what else do you do in your surrender practice?
Yeah, so it is taking time to get quiet. I had to actually, so this is the reality of that. I did have to slow my life down. I did had to make some really significant shifts in my life to allow my life to become more simple. So like I sold the business that was no longer a match. I did simplify my life. And I think sometimes we'll be called to do that. We'll be called to allow space in our life, to create space in our life. So I don't want to minimize that I did have to make some of those really real life choices, big choices, and also just taking time, making I call it a connection practice. So where we come in and we take that time to connect to ourselves. We don't have to sit there silently, even becoming aware of our thoughts. Silence is beautiful. It's a beautiful thing to be, to grow our capacity to tolerate. Or to handle. When we first start this practice, that's very difficult to do. So even just becoming more comfortable with sitting with yourself and sitting with your thoughts and being with yourself. So often the reason why we're hustling and we're so busy is we're not comfortable with ourselves.
Oh, so true.
Yeah, like everything outside of us is defining us. And so it's slowly building over time the ability to be with ourselves and to accept all parts of ourselves.
That reminds me of that book, Wherever You Go, There You Are.
Yeah.
That book. It's like you can't run.
You can't. I always say that your life is simply a reflection of the inner relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
Right. So everything in your life, every relationship, every situation is just reflecting back to you the relationship with yourself. And the only thing that you have the power to affect is that relationship with yourself. And so if I can come in and attend to the relationship with myself, and I just use my life as a reflection to point on how to address the relationship with myself, then my life begins to transform on an outer level.
Right.
And we got to be able to create that space for ourselves.
And I think this is where the word that I mentioned to you at the beginning really came into play for me was grace.
Yes.
Having that grace with yourself when you are looking inward, because sometimes we don't like what we see. And that's a hard realization. But the message that I would want to give from that is, but you are amazing in there. Like you are enough in there. And sometimes you just need to dig a little bit deeper. Get rid of some of those things, And
we're all shades of gray. We all have our light. We all have our dark, every single one of us. So we're all just these beautiful shades of gray. There's nobody who doesn't. I mean, I can be judgmental sometimes. I can be a jerk sometimes. I can be mean. I can be and I have been at those times in my life, right? So, I think sometimes we go, oh God, if I go look at myself, I'm going to have to acknowledge, all of us, every single one of us has that, or things that we're like, oh my God, I wish I did that differently. Yes, all of us. Right. And that doesn't have to define you, right? This is just so often who we have become is simply a result of our experiences. And we're just a reflection of how we've learned to get our needs met, how we've learned to get love, how we've learned to cope with discomfort, how we've learned to handle life. That's all. And so it's almost like by default at first. And this process is about going, how's my default mechanisms working for me?
Yeah.
And if I can just see my defaults, but not blame myself for the defaults, just simply see my defaults for what they are.
Yeah.
My beautiful human way of taking care of myself and staying safe. Yeah. And I could just see them for that. And then go, how's this working for me? what would I like going forward? And if I were to choose different patterns and choose different ways of showing up and different perspectives and thought processes, I can actually co-create a different reality for myself. Yum. Like I don't have to just live on default.
Yes.
And this is what I kept challenging myself to do, was just, or inviting, is like, okay, I see this part of me, and okay, I love you, girl. I see you. I know why you did that, and you're also this courageous and compassionate person. And so like we can lean into that.
Yes.
We're all of it.
We are. And I love how you said at the beginning too, that sometimes we need help with that.
Yeah.
Like we expect us to know how to do this ourselves. And it's really an unfair expectation to put on ourselves, because how are we supposed to know how to do all of this?
Yes. And chances are who's in your circle, just by the nature of who's in your circle, they're likely just a match for who you are.
Yes.
Right. And so they're probably doing very similar things as you, the people in your circle. So we don't necessarily even have a model of different realities or a model of new ways of doing things.
Yeah.
Right. And so sometimes
that's a comfort zone, right?
Yeah. So we're going to attract the match for who we are. Right. So people in our life are going to reflect our love back to us. Mm-hmm. They're going to reflect our fears back to us.
Yes, the things we don't like about ourselves.
They're going to reflect our gifts. They're also going to reflect our insecurities back to us, right? Yeah.
And just in that comment is to be able to step back and see that, right? That's what power is.
Yes.
Is the reflection back to us.
Yeah.
And the more that we do the inner work, the more that will be reflected back to us too, because that will change the people that we're surrounding ourselves with. And there's never, I think at this stage of our lives, I just read the other day, it was like our life is like an elevator. And sometimes as you start to rise, you stop at floors and people go up.
Yeah.
You let people off and then you let somebody in and then you go up again. And it's the same thing. The doors open, some go up, some come in. And I just love that analogy because I can visually see that.
Yeah. Like, and it doesn't have to be good, bad, right, or wrong.
Yes, exactly.
It's just energy. Everything in life is just energy. So we're here in this existence, in this lifetime, as energetic beings, having experiences, just energetic experiences. And as I choose to respond with different energy, every thought, every action, and is as an energy. So if I'm used to, I would say for me, I was really operating at this level of like fear and anxiety and pride. And that's the hustle I describe, the hustle for worthiness. And that's where I operated from. But then when I started to make choices at a level of courage or willingness or love or acceptance, right? So that thought around, I could hate that part of me, or I could accept that part of me. And if I choose to accept that part of me that maybe I don't love, I'm choosing acceptance, and I'm raising my own energy. And so to the point of the elevator, as I'm rising in my energy, I'm just going to have people coming in and out of my life that are a match for that energy so that I can learn more. Yes. And it will reflect.
I love that.
Continue to reflect myself back to me so I can continue to choose.
Yes.
Am I going to choose love in this moment, or am I going to choose fear in this moment?
So
and
good.
None of it's good, bad, right, or wrong. It's all just energy. And so when you start seeing life like this,
I know
it just becomes a series of energetic choices, and your life becomes a reflection of the energy of those choices. No good, bad, right, or wrong.
Right. I love this. Okay, we've only got 2 more minutes. So the question that you said at the beginning that you started to ask yourself was, there has to be another way. So just that opening up, that curiosity, that all of a sudden things start to show up for you in a different way because you're open to seeing them. Opportunities, like you said, mentors, books, whatever that is. So fabulous question to ask yourself when you're in that mode. Yeah. And it is a process. So give yourself some grace in that time.
Yes.
I have a question that I just heard on a podcast this morning that I think I'm going to start asking all of my guests this question.
Okay.
I love it so much. And I know you'll be just great with it. But we all are here, and we wonder what we're going to leave when we're no longer here. Right. So
Mhm.
this is the question. It was Jim Rohn
Okay.
podcast.
Okay.
What is your life's message? Because we all are living one
Mm.
in our everyday. So at the end, what do you think your life message would be?
Oh, what a beautiful question. It's
Isn't
deep.
it?
Okay, I'm not going to get too deep on this. So I'll just come in and so for me and what informs my life and how I think this is it. It's about how what informs my life is this living connected, right? There's this idea of living connected that my message is that the way to live life is to live connected to your inner guidance and to lead your life from that place.
Beautiful.
Right? And when you lead from that place, then you create this beautiful, unique imprint, and you have a beautiful, unique path, which you will share and inspire others naturally just by being you. And so I
Yes.
think my message is to live from that place and like trust in that. Like, can you trust it and live from that place? The only thing you can do is serve in that way, because that's the most beautiful place and the most authentic place that you can live from. So live connected. That's sort of my, I don't know, my
I knew
word.
you would nail it. I knew you would nail it. I got to come back and watch that and write that out because you are being what your life's message is. And I think that's the beautiful
Yeah.
piece of being authentic and inauthentic. And I know that's a word that's out there right now, but people can see the difference. I believe we can, well, I don't even know about seeing it. I believe we can feel the difference between somebody who's living their life's message, being it, and someone who is trying,
Yeah.
but it might not be the message that they really, believe in. So I have to wrap it up. I thank you so much, Andrea, for being here. You are just an absolute massive impact on the world. I know the ripple effect that you make and the people that you touch and the people that you help and that you serve. So I just want to thank you so much for that. I want to thank you for being here, watching the replay, and always, as you know, you are more than enough as is. And I really hope to see you next week. So thanks. Okay.